Hey everybody, welcome back. This is the next episode of Authors Bantering. I'm Josh Bresslin, that's Ian M. Rogers. And so last week we started touching on the topic of critique groups, and we decided this week we'd jump right in. So this video here is going to be all about critique groups, what to look for in selecting one, the benefits of them, things to be aware of, and really how to be an awesome critique partner. So this might get a little bit lengthy, but we're going to go into all the details here. I know for myself, this has probably been the one thing that's helped me improve my writing the most, especially when I was a kid. When I say kid, I mean like when I first started out. The first couple years of my writing, if I didn't have a critique group, I probably would be stuck, because what critique groups really offer you is a chance to have your work given, obviously a critique, but a chance to take feedback and learn how to apply it, but also learning how to discern what's helpful feedback and what's not, and understanding kind of the deeper issues with your work. Unfortunately, as writers, we can't critique our own work, right? We can't self-critique. It's a difficult art that takes a lot of time, and so often we rely upon other people to kind of point out the flaws, and then we have to go through and basically make those corrections. And so I guess we'll start off right away at the beginning here. Ian, what do you find are the biggest benefits of a critique group for you?
I think hands down, any conversation about critique groups has to start with exactly what you just said. Writers can't critique their own work. I mean, once you get better, you can see more of the flaws, but especially when you're just starting out, you write something and then you imagine what's on the page is actually what's in your brain. The vision of the story that you have, you don't always see when it's not making it onto the page, so that when a stranger reads it, they don't see what's in your head, they see what's on the page. And so that's why it's very important to figure out what's going on inside people's heads when they're reading your work. Are they picking up on what I'm doing? Are they imagining what I want them to imagining? Is the story clear? Are the characters clear? Are the events and kind of technical information, is that clear? Or are they maybe getting confused, imagining something different? Or are they maybe caught up in sort of a clumsiness of the writing, which is something that can be really difficult for emerging writers as well. So gauging how other people read your work in so many levels is the fundamental. And I think when you're just starting out, this can be a really, really quick and easy way to see what's working and what's not working.
Yep.
And I say that, both are very important. There's a lot of emphasis. Some critique groups place a lot of emphasis on what's not working. Fix this. This is bad. This is bad. Don't do this. Don't do, and so on, and so on, and so on. And that's, all well and good, because that helps you improve. But it's also very helpful to know what is working. Like if I take a risk as a writer and put something on the page, I want to know that, one, people understood it and that it was clear to them, and then two, they liked it and thought it was interesting. And so I want that positive feedback as well about things in the work that are going well, so that, one, I won't change them or edit them out by accident, and two, I can do more of them, either in that piece or in a subsequent piece.
Nice.
And so again, that can be really, really difficult to judge that by yourself.
Good. And so I guess now that we've kind of obviously shown the advantages of joining one, for you, what would you look for, or what should someone look for when it comes to choosing a critique group?
I think that for me, the most important is going to be writers that are about at my same level.
Okay.
And I say this because, if I'm potentially going to be working with writers who are way more established and, have been doing this for a much, much longer and have attained a higher level of not only sort of success and fame, but maybe technical skill, then, if I'm going to be the super low rung on the totem pole, one, I'm not going to be able to give them good feedback on their work. And then two, maybe the feedback that they give me can get into the condescending, like, oh, you young whippersnapper, this is what's going on kind of stuff. Huh. And that is not always conducive to forming a good relationship of quality in the critique group. Likewise, the reverse can happen. If I'm working with people who are very much just starting out and making, very rookie mistakes and really learning the fundamentals, it's not going to be interesting for me to read their work. And maybe I'm going to be giving them too much advice, or, pointing out all the things that they would need to fix, and it would be too overwhelming. And maybe because they're just starting out, they aren't able to give me good feedback on my work the way that I want to be getting feedback. So again, when I'm looking for critique partners and groups, I want people who are more or less where I am now. There can be some exceptions to that, or maybe if there's one member who's a little bit below the average, I think that works fine. But you don't want a wide mix, and you don't want to be the best, very much the best or the worst person in a critique group.
Okay, interesting. Okay, so
what is your kind of go-to?
I was going to say I'm going to disagree a little bit with you here, which is good. So I agree with you on the latter part of your argument, which was you don't ever want to be the smartest guy in the room. You don't ever want to be the best writer in a critique group, right? Because the feedback you're going to get is probably not going to be as strong as someone that's at your level or above. But for me, I'm always trying to be like the second worst writer in a critique group, right? You never want to be the absolute worst. I agree with you. You kind of want to be in a group basically ideally where there's like one person who's a little bit worse than you, just because at least at that point, you're at least going to be able to get a little bit more out. Like if you're the weakest person in the group, it's going to be you probably are dealing with people that are a bit too advanced basically for you, and like the feedback is probably going to maybe go over your head. If someone's just a little bit worse than you, it's still in the group, and you're the second worst, I think you'll get the benefit of getting the most information back, but also not getting sort of that label, not getting a lot of that condescension and all that stuff that the weaker person might get. So for me, I'm always trying to be in like the weakest one or close to the weakest one in a critique group, just because I think I'm going to get the most out of it. But inevitably, I think just inevitably though, Ian, you are going to end up basically usually with people that are at your level and some that are a little bit above and some that are a little bit below, but generally around your level. Can vary a little bit. It definitely can vary a little bit. I know there are some that are really selective. I've had people that have gone through my MFA program I was in, and they only will go through, like, they'll only take critique groups with people that have gone through the program with them, or people that have gone through other MFAs, because they have a certain bias of like, well, if we don't put that in there, anybody who just started writing a couple years ago could start offering feedback. And if they haven't gone through MFA, they probably aren't at our level. So there's a little bit of snobbiness with that. But in general, though, you're going to be going through with people that are probably at your level. Just if you join a writing group, right, people generally are going to be around probably the group that you hang around with. You're probably going to be somewhere on that level.
I don't want to let that point drift by. Actually, snobbiness is a big red flag in critique groups. If you are hanging out with people, or you do one critique group or one critique session, and you sense a kind of snobbiness, that one or more members are looking down on you or your writing, this is a really, really big red flag, and it's a sign that you're not going to fit in well there. When I was in graduate school, our critique group workshops, there was a big emphasis placed on literary fiction, capital L literary, Raymond Carver type stuff about serious topics, a lot of focus on sort of rural issues, rural problems, true to life characters. And then, people who are interested in genre fiction, your sci-fi, your fantasy, your action adventure, it was very much looked down on by a lot of these writers. And it was really, for me, it was very sad to see, these writers bring in genre stories or genre novels that they were very interested in, but then to have, the other writers in different kinds of ways, look down on them, or, sometimes even blatantly talk down, or talk about these writers, when their backs were turned sort of at the bar afterwards. And, and being in an environment like that, you're not going to get good feedback. You're not going to get the feedback that works for you or your genre. There's going to be very much a condescension gap that you're going to be dealing with. So again, if you sense that, trust your gut, find a new group.
Good. I guess that we've kind of moved on to selection. Another thing to keep in mind as well is make sure that the group that you join has a style that works for you. And that could be everything from, just like you were saying, Ian, like genre. So there might be some that focus a lot on lit fic, right? Some that focus a lot on sci-fi fantasy. I was part of a critique group where I was only doing lit fic, and they were doing the sort of sci-fi fantasy stuff. And it was something where the group was fine, but I didn't quite fit that mesh, right? So make sure that the format, as far as what the books are, what the topics and the type of stuff that's written, make sure there's a little bit of of sameness within that. And also make sure that the group you join has the same sort of style of critique that you like in terms of format. And what I mean by that is there are some I've been a part of where it's very free form, right? Ian, we've been part of the same one before, where it's just, each person goes around and offers feedback on the particular person. And it's a little bit free form, right? Like they can offer feedback, and you as like the person's being critiqued can offer like, oh yeah, I agree, well, here's what I meant. There's a little bit of dialogue, right? I've been a part of other ones basically where it's, if you're the one that's being critiqued, it is silent and they will read the critique to you about you, like in third person almost, where it's like, I think the author is trying to do this thing here, but this wasn't coming across right, and you just remain silent and just take it, and you just make your notes basically. That's a bit more of like what you might see like an MFA program and all that stuff. But I've been part of that as well. So just find a critique group that has a certain style of feedback that you might like. I've just, again, another one that came to me was I've seen one. This was not one I was part of, but I know someone that was part of it, where everybody just decided to give critiques online, like, and they would basically send papers of critique work to the individual, but they would never actually meet in person, actually discuss it. Like, so basically they would get all their feedback and they'd offer all the feedback to the people, but there would never be any kind of interaction to kind of keep any kind of shame of being critiqued away from it, I guess. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, but I do know that that was a format that was done as well. So find a style or a group that has a certain style that you prefer as far as getting feedback. And I guess, I don't know.
I'll even add to that.
Yeah.
Again, I think these are all really good points. I'll add to that, critique groups do have a social factor to them as well. I'll talk about, just shoot the shit with my critique groups. We'll share ideas or goofy jokes or things like that. And I think being in a critique group with people you get along with, there's something really, really to be said for that. It's not a do or die, I think, but in a lot of ways, I think that can make a critique experience better if you get along with people.
Bingo. And so we've kind of gone over what to look for, styles. Now, you as a critiquer, right? How can you be the best critiquer? How can you be the best critique partner to other people? I'd say for myself, and I know, Ian, you're going to agree with this because you've pointed this out actually a lot on your own as well, which is awesome, which is, as a critiquer, the best thing you can do is look for advice in the context of what the author's trying to do. What I mean by that basically is, when something's not working, the best thing you can do is you can say, I see what you're trying to do. In the story, you're trying to show this or you're trying to do this, but it's not working, and here's why it's not working. That is the best style to offer feedback. Because what it does basically is it's addressing the author as you understanding what they're trying to do. You know what their piece is trying to say, but it's not working because of this. And when you can answer that, when you can say, I know what you're trying to do with this piece, but it's not working because of this, you both, as the reader, understand it. You've dissected it to a fantastic point. And you're also offering the best advice that you can, because at the end of the day, that's what the author's looking for. They're looking to see, is the point of my story getting across to people? And if it isn't, what's not working to get the point or whatever I'm showing on the page across? And so as a critiquer, always look for that. Always be looking for what the author's trying to do and why it is or is not working.
Yes, I think readers who don't do that and critique partners who don't do that, which again, I 100% agree with everything you just said. Readers who don't do that will often try to impose their own will onto the piece. Like, you should do this. It would be really cool if you did this, or added a dragon, or cut this off at page 12, or added a new character, or did this in first person. Sometimes this is just the form of things they think would be really cool. Or sometimes it's because the critiquer sees a problem in the piece and thinks, okay, how would I solve this using my writer skills? And then an idea will come out about how something will be fixed. They're less interested in how the author imagines the piece or what the author wants to do and what they personally would do. This is, again, I see a lot of beginning critiquers who do this. It's really, really a developed skill to move past that and get to the what is the author's intent aspect that you were just talking about before. I'll add to what you said is in one other way as well. This idea that, you try to see what the author is trying to do, but sometimes as a reader, maybe you can't see what the writer's trying to do, or you're not sure what the writer's trying to do. And so I will be open and I'll think, okay, he might be going for this here, or she might be trying to do that, or maybe they're trying to do this other thing here. And I'll maybe make some guesses and maybe try to bring them up during a critique. I had this is actually the perfect example. I was in a critique group once with someone who brought in a novel, which, I read the first 3 chapters. I couldn't make heads or tails with them. I legitimately wasn't sure whether the work was meant to be very experimental in like a William S. Burroughs Naked Lunch kind of way, or if it was meant to be like just a witty like fiction comedy, with like snappy moments in it, or if it was even meant to be like a young adult story in some way, and it was just very, very rough. I legitimately was not sure. So I showed up to the critique with my uncertainty. I said, hey, I had a lot of trouble with this piece. I'm not sure what you're trying to do. And then I gave my best guesses for what was going on or what was the writer was trying to do on the page. It led to a really productive conversation. The writer ended up throwing out those chapters and then taking an entirely new course, which was what they wanted to do. And that may not have happened had I tried to impose my own will on the piece or made assumptions about what the writer was trying to do.
Absolutely.
So
And inevitably your opinions are going to get involved in these critiques at some point. So it's always good to preface that. Like, it's not basically wherever I see a story where it's like, this isn't working for me, but I'm just letting you my opinion here. This is just not working because X, Y, and Z for me. This has nothing to do with kind of what you're showing. It's just an additional thing here. For example, I was in a critique group last month, and the gentleman submitted a story. It literally was titled "Fast Car," like the Tracy Chapman song, and the whole plot of the story was literally the lyrics of that song, like as a short story. And I said, I don't know if you know this, but there's already a song with the same sort of topics here, and I just can't get into it because I've already seen this happen. Everyone else in the critique group loved it. Like, they all got the reference, and they were like, "Oh, it's like the song because you're doing a different take on the song and all this." Everyone else seemed to love it. I was the only person that was like, "I've seen the song, I've heard the song before, and you doing a story based upon it, I've already experienced it. Like, it's not working for me because I've already heard that. Like, you literally using the song title in the actual title of this piece here. It's not working for me. I've seen this before. I've heard the lyrics to the song. This is not working for me." And so I made it very clear that I just couldn't get into it because of that. I have no idea if other people, if an editor of a magazine or whatever basically is going to agree with everyone else in the group or with me. But I let them know, like, I just could not get into the piece because of this reason. And so I made it very clear that's more of a personal opinion, more of a preference thing than actual, this piece isn't working because you're trying to do this thing but not. It's just a very subjective sort of thing.
Yes. I think that was a really smart way to handle that situation, actually.
Yeah, and
I'll say that maybe with the fast car thing, the writer might have gotten in trouble with some copyright type issues because, again, like song lyrics, that can get pretty hairy.
maybe
Somebody else's idea.
Well, no, yeah. So no,
I haven't seen the story, so I don't know for sure.
So no song lyric was used. No, just the title basically. But the entire plot of the short story was literally the lyrics of the song. It's about like someone that has like an alcoholic parent, like, and they're trying to like get away from their environment. And he was trying to show, like, we're on a little bit of tangent, but he was trying to show, like, I think it was like the dog catching the car. He said, like, what actually happens if someone was to pull that off, like, and what would happen to their life and all this stuff. And I'm like, dude, it's too close to this thing. Like, I can't get into it because I But anyways, my point is, like, you're going to times find pieces that don't work for you for those reasons, and making it very clear up front that it's not working because of more of a personal thing is going to be super important there. Yeah.
So we talked about a lot of things. We talked about what kind of critique groups to work for in terms of skill level, style of working, camaraderie, how to give critiques, looking what the author is looking for, being clear when something's your opinion. One thing we haven't talked about is very nuts and boltsy, but length of pieces that you're submitting. Sometimes there can be confusion when some writers want to submit all 50,000 words, and other writers just have a couple of poems, and that can be that can cause issues sometimes. The best way is to kind of find numbers that people agree with, and if there's room for a big difference there, then so be it. If people are okay with reading a lot, then that's okay. But I hate to be the one that makes somebody read a large piece for that month when the person doesn't have a lot of time. So I would say be respectful of people's time in that respect.
Bingo. Yeah, and exactly right. And it's, for me, it's one of those things where I think whenever I join groups, it's always kind of understood after like where like your number is going to be. Like I'm part of one where it's like right now it's very, very clear that like the most they'll take is maybe 5,000 words, maybe 10,000 at the most if it's a longer piece, but that's it. Like, we're not going beyond that, just because everyone has lives and we have a lot of pieces to read and we all work for a living. You know what I mean? Other groups may be different than that. And it's one of those things too where it's kind of like the frequency of meetups, right? Some people love to meet up once a week. Some people like to do it once a month. It's very much something where you have to find out what works for you. Can you, and to be honest, like it'd be great to get feedback on 50,000 words of writing every single month, but can you read that too? Can you focus? You know, Ian's taking his head right there, right? Like, can you actually read 3 to 4 50,000 word pieces in a month and offer good feedback on all of them? Probably not. So understanding too that it's sort of a game where you have to be willing to give as much quality feedback as other people and finding out where your limits are at. But yeah, so
I was going to say, last thing for me is probably just to be respectful of people, you know, give good feedback, cooperate with people. You know, if people need to reschedule, I would say work with them, help them out, be a good team member, you know, do your homework. And, you know, I see critique groups as sort of in a very broad or general way, it's a professional working relationship. Because again, you're working with each other's material in this kind of way, and so I think people want to work with somebody who's going to, you know, do the work and give good feedback, but also it's going to be cooperative, easy to work with, serious when the work needs to be done, but then also fun enough to show up and have a good time with. And
yes.
So you might think about, you know, how can, especially if you're just joining a critique group for the first time, how can you make the other people's experience good and hope that they share the love as well?
Bingo. And I guess just to kind of piggyback off that, have a standard for yourself as well. These critique groups are not oftentimes, like, I've been very, very lucky. I think, Ian, you probably have as well, being part of some really good ones. There are plenty of people who should not be in critique groups. Like, there are plenty of writers who just emotionally are not ready to have the word critique. They're you know, they have bad personalities, and if you're not working with them, get out fast. Do not stick around in critique groups forever. Even a bad critique group is honestly worse than not being one at all. Like, they're kind of like relationships, right? Like, better be single than a bad relationship. Same thing with critique groups. So don't be afraid to leave them. And maybe, as a writer, you're gonna have plenty over the course of your life. Like, I've been a part of at least several now, and I'm only in one at this moment. So you will, over the course of your writing life, kind of fall out with certain groups, join up with other ones, and be willing to leave them. If you get a bad vibe or someone's not, you know, being a really good critiquer, basically, and no one wants to kick this person out of the group, then leave. Be the person to get out, because it's a nightmare to be part of a critique group that you absolutely hate.
Red flags to look for. You already said one, but if people get very defensive when their work is criticized, that's a huge red flag.
Yes.
Defensiveness can take many forms. Often it can take the form of, you know, if somebody points out something that's not working on a piece, the person will jump in and try to explain, like, well, I was just trying to do this, or that's only because of that, or this isn't finished yet, or what, and then so on, and sort of deflect that criticism in this way. And this can often be very stressful, and it can bring tension to the group. And worse yet, it serves as a bad model for other members who might try to do that too.
Exactly.
So that's a really, really big red flag. And then another big red flag that I've unfortunately seen is just not reading people's pieces closely, or not giving thoughtful feedback. You know, the idea that feedback is very superficial, or, you know, it's obvious the person didn't read the whole thing, or, you know, they're not really going into as much depth as you as the writer would like. And, you know, the idea that you, especially if it's more than one member doing this, you know, this can lead to some very unproductive sessions where you're not going to get the feedback you need to move on.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah, and I think we went through pretty much everything. There were not many stones unturned here.
Pretty exhaustive, actually. But again, it's an important topic, and I'm glad we're talking about this. And
it's a time to go into, yeah.
You know, if you've never been in a critique group before, it can be hard to know what to look for. So if this is, you know, your first time, or you're thinking about one, I really hope this has been helpful.
Perfect. And so with that, we'll wrap up here. If you have enjoyed it, please make sure to give us a thumbs up and make sure to subscribe. And with that, we'll be back next Monday with our next video. Until then, we hope you guys have an awesome writing session, and we will see you next week. I'm Josh Bresslin, that's Ian M. Rogers, and we will see you all next Monday.
Take it easy.